listening to our News on the March segment, thought that there was a very easy sidebar that we seem to be ignoring. And that was when we talked about the sex store auctioning off hundreds of items online, I think until tomorrow. We are aware of the updates on the adult bathhouse story.
Oh, yeah.
Which apparently is under consideration to reopen them. But I'm not stupid. It was already on Kessler's list. So we wait with eager anticipation to see how Kessler delivers that particular nugget of information. The potential return of adult bathhouses in which consenting adults would be allowed to, I guess, engage in whatever, lascivious behavior they wanted to. That's the way it's been explained to me.
Is that what a bathhouse is?
Well, I don't know that it has to be that, but I'm not a great bathhouse mind. But it kind of turned into that.
We'll ask Kessler.
And I'm sure he'll have all the background on it as well. I have no question that nothing would enhance the restaurant industry more than that. I'm sure that maybe will have. I'm guessing that might have a better impact than the Michelin guide thing.
Yeah,
I could be wrong on that, but that's just me being a little bit on the snarky side. Let me find the. And then I'm going to finally allow you to pay off the tease when I asked you for your own opinion
I'm
about
still thinking about it. On Geno?
Geno apology and the Dawn Staley reaction.
Yep.
Our good friend Adam Platt, who we appreciate his listening to the program, he heard us talking about the subject yesterday that we got into regarding the safety of our transit lines, right? The story that had been in the Star Tribune on that, and we talked about, barriers and making people pay and all that sort of thing. He tells us that the green line or blue line really can't be secured with barrier gates because most of the stations are what he calls at grade.
Yes.
So you can just walk off the platform over the tracks to evade the gates. That the lines were built in the European honor system style where fare enforcement is random. On board, only a small number of elevated or underground stations on the system could be secured, mostly on the blue line. Metro Transit could put a security at every station and on every train, as Seattle apparently does, and I suspect that's what will be necessary to arrest the decline of ridership. So, interesting update from him on some of the on-the-ground realities here that might, physically speaking, make it almost impossible. The problem with this alternative, I think, is that that's more manpower.
Yeah, it's cost.
You're back to cost and manpower as opposed to once a gate's up, one could assume, if it's sturdy and if it really keeps people out who are not interested in paying. So more on that later. So if you're just joining us now, I mentioned that we often evaluate apologies via the Pelf scale on the Apolodazzle segment over the years, and I had evaluated the original Geno Auriemma apology as worthy of no more than a half Pelf, largely because he did not mention the individual that he needed to apologize to first, the South Carolina head coach, Dawn Staley, who, as I said, I have no problem with rivalries. I have no problem with two coaches not particularly liking one another, and I don't even know what their history is. That's part of the game. But under those conditions, to literally do everything in his power to sort of pitch a very adolescent fit at the moment where she's supposed to be celebrating a good victory over an undefeated team was embarrassing to him. And you have to start with her, not just saying her staff and everybody else. So he is maybe heard from people saying not enough, even though a couple people said, well, he did say he called her directly. But at that point, early, what I heard was that Staley said, well, I haven't really checked my texts, or I don't know if I really has, so who knows if she's playing a game there too. So he comes back with a more frontal apology.
Yep.
in which he does do, I think, a better job of dressing himself down, and he does name her specifically, makes her a big part of this. So if you've already half Pelfed it, can you save yourself with another full Pelf, or does that still have to be downgraded if it took a second chance for a guy who should have known better from the beginning to get to that place?
Very simply, I give him no extra credit for the eventual full Pelf. It's like in college when your grade is 80% of the homework and attendance, and then the final exam is 20% or whatever. Mm-hmm. He gets a 0% bump on the second full Pelf. So I would probably give him a quarter Pelf for the first apology. I don't even know if I can go half.
Well, I said half just because half's easier to say than quarter, but you probably
true.
It could be quarter. You're right.
So
it certainly wasn't full.
No, I don't give him much credit for it at all because it's, first of all, this should have been a one-day story, maybe. Yeah. I actually got more annoyed by the multiple statements yesterday because at some point it's, how many more statements do we need here, guys? Like, it was a dumb moment. It was stupid. I don't think it's worth the endless discussion and teeth gnashing on, well, did he apologize enough? Did he apologize to the right person? What does Dawn think? Did he call her? Did they take the call? Like, do we do this? And I'm being serious about this. Do we do this in men's sports if coaches get in fights? Do we have to have a statement about it 52 times? I don't think we do, right?
Well, I think
they get asked about it and then you kind of move on.
Yeah, I think there's a greater chance they would if the first one is as failed as it was. I think that's what led to it. I would argue that, and this is what we've always said about Apollodazzle, when all the big shots get in a room with the individual who's being, who's kind of going to be forced to apologize, when they sit down and try to consider the strategy of it and what the best approach is, a lot of times it does become performative, and a lot of times that's why it's not worth believing, because it looks like it's sort of been put together by a bunch of talking heads or a bunch of people who are literally trying to just strategize on it. But I do think one thing that anybody in that situation should understand is you probably get one shot at it. And I wouldn't say probably. I say if your apology is going to be believed at all, and you can, again, make the argument that it's become so performative that it's not worth all of this teeth gnashing in the first place.
Right.
But if you're going to have any shot at it, it's got to be the original. It's got to be the first. You've got to hit a home run there. And even then, a lot of people are going to doubt it, and understandably so in some cases.
I don't think, by the way, he should resign or quit or be fired.
No, who's saying that?
No one, but that's where people go.
Right.
And I appreciate that Dawn Staley actually did say, look, we all do stupid stuff.
Well, that's what I wanted to get to.
Yeah.
We've never evaluated the individual who's been apologized to.
How they react.
How they react.
Yep.
And whether, and I thought the reaction she gave was quite good.
Agree.
I thought, if I'm grading, I don't know we wouldn't use the Pelf scale there, but I believe the way she ultimately handled it, because, she could extend it.
Yes.
And maybe she's smart enough to say, we don't need to keep going down this particular road. But I thought where she said, what was it? We all do stupid things.
Yeah, and we shouldn't be judged on one moment.
That was big of her.
It's classy.
To rise above it. That's the adult approach to take. Yes. So I give her, if on the Pelf scale, I think that would be a full Pelf. And I don't think we've tended to spend much time on the individual who's apologized to, how they handle it, because not everybody handles it the same way either.
Right.
And I thought that was about as good as a job as you could handle it.
It was great. Period. And I love the fact that in the heat of the moment, she said, I'll beat Geno's ass.
Yes.
I loved that.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that either.
That was fun. That added to it. I thought that was cool.
The texter guy writes, you guys are way overanalyzing the Geno thing. It's only got legs because you're giving it legs. I would vehemently disagree with 952 guy. The only reason I wanted to talk about it anymore, the only reason I wanted to talk about it originally, was because it was lousy. It was a failed attempt. If that's your attempt to apologize, don't. So we're not giving it legs. Geno gave it legs, and he clearly agreed because he came out with another more frontal apology too late. So that's the legs to it. Like you, my point of this isn't he needs to go away. He needs to go to some kind of a rehab, emotion rehab clinic or whatever the case may be. But the legs are given precisely because the original apology was so inept and so weak. And in fact, it came off a little bit like, I'm still annoyed.
Yep.
I'm still annoyed. I still feel like I got wrong somehow, even though, all she had the temerity to do was beat his team, that I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of an apology, but not one all that much. So again, you can shoot the messenger if you want, but you're actually, when you do that, enabling, I think, the individuals to say, well, it's really not about us. We're going to get protected by people who say, oh, you guys are talking about this too much and beating a dead horse. Again, it was on national TV, the national championship semifinal game, where everybody is watching the thing, and he made a complete fool out of his approach, and people are going to notice that in that situation. And given his legendary status, they're going to notice that even more. Doesn't mean he has to go away. Doesn't mean he has to quit. Doesn't mean anybody here is suggesting he be fired. But you can't be taken seriously on that if you're not going to, speak directly to the individual who you went after on the sidelines, right? Exactly it. All right, we'll get a break in now. I got a couple good texts to get into on a number of subjects we've explored earlier. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open at 64686. I got a whopper of a story out of San Francisco, California. I'm hoping we can get to that at about 4:30. Is there anything new on the Strait of Hormuz? Do we know that it's closed? We know what Iran says it's going to do. Is it closed? Do we know? We do know that there's continuing fighting going on and bombing going on. So to this point, there's not much evidence that the ceasefire is in any way, shape, or form holding, if it ever even started. If you get any more on the Strait, please let me know.
And for another installment of Dairyland Diaries.
It's a dangerous program decision I've made today, in that Dairyland Diaries over the years, back in its heyday, when it was a regular feature on the show, tended, I think it's fair to say, to mock and ridicule the state to our immediate east, correct? With stories that came to us unsolicited.
That's true.
That you just simply can't make up. Some of them had to do with, Green Bay Packers zealotry. Some of them had to do with other issues. Some of them had to do with booze. It was a combination of all those things, right? This entry is a departure, because there's nothing really snarky that automatically comes to mind. But I still thought it was kind of interesting, and you may know all about this. I'm not sure, but you're familiar, many people are becoming familiar with Con Kneppel.
Oh, yeah.
Who has become historic in his rookie year, right? He has hit more three-point shots than any rookie in basketball history. He's a member of the Charlotte Hornets, a team that just knocked us off.
We just saw him.
Just the other day. Do you happen to know where Con Kneppel forged his basketball, or certainly his shooting acumen?
I don't think I do.
In his dad's Milwaukee, Wisconsin rec league.
Oh, I did see this headline. Yes.
It's the background to me is pretty good. Wall Street Journal version of events indicates that when he was just 14, he was thrown into a league of grizzled clock punchers, retirees, and guys reliving their college glory days. By the time anyone was ready to call him a prodigy, he'd spent years honing his skills against the best old man hoopers that Milwaukee had to offer. So before he made the NBA record 286 three-pointers at last count, the now 6'6" Knepel joined a slightly less glamorous outfit known as the Closed Gym League. The CGL was a haven for the most serious weeknight warriors in the upper Midwest. And it was run by his father, the first Con Knepel the first. Rosters loaded with former Division I players. Games held at local middle schools lasted an NBA-length 48 minutes. Fouls were grown man hard and rarely called. So he's playing at 14 against guys who are 2-3 times his age. And there are a lot of people, including, you remember the name Travis Diener?
Yeah, the Marquette guard.
Yes, spent parts of 5 seasons in the NBA before retiring to the CGL. He says it all stems, the idea here that, his peers are scrimmaging against players in their own grade. The young Con Knepel is taking a crash course in basketball nitty-gritty from guys 2 or 3 times his age. It all stems from getting his butt kicked against stronger, more physical people. You learn how to play the right way. Another CGL regular, your guy, Ben Brust.
Oh, yeah.
Another former, I say another because, as you said, Diener was Marquette, a former Wisconsin Badger.
Radio host now in Milwaukee.
Is that true?
Yeah, does a good show.
Huh. He notes that in Knepel's first season in the league, Brust rammed him with a shoulder to see how he would react.
Bo Ryan, classy and gracious in defeat.
Knepel didn't flinch, didn't call a foul, drove past Brust, kicked the ball out to an open shooter to win the game. At that moment, I was like, hey, he's different, Brust said. He was 8,000 times smarter than any freshman I'd ever seen. And soon enough, Knepel became the best player in league's history before he could even shave. The league held 4 seasons per year, and in each quarter, Knepel transformed into the CGL version of Michael Jordan. Before his sophomore season, he was scoring 30 points a game. By his senior year, he was averaging triple-double while pouring in more than 54 points a night. 54 points. I knew nothing about this. I didn't even know anything about this league. And I assume there's a bunch of these around the country.
Oh, I'm sure.
But is this one of the better ones? I don't know. This is, I think, Dateline Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
I mean, every lifetime has like a noon hoops game, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And so I know there's men's leagues and women's leagues all over the place. What that I draw parallels to like Rubio playing actual professional basketball in Spain. It's the same theory.
That's true.
You play adults and you're playing grown-ass men and women.
Well, a lot of European players,
yes,
that's part of their success. We've talked about they are accustomed to playing against people a lot older, and it toughens them up in a lot of ways.
It sharpens you.
And sharpens you as well.
Yes. He's fun to watch, too. As painful as it was for a Wolves fan the other night. Question. It's fun to watch him play.
Do you agree with this, speaking of pro basketball? This is via the Athletic, although I don't think Johnny Athletic wrote this. I think it was Zach Harper. My friend Ian said this regarding the 65-game rule. The praise would be universal and immediate if Silver flipped it. Who would complain? I'd like to raise my hand. I would complain. I just don't understand how quickly we're willing to live in the moment and forget what prompted the rule change in the first place. I hate that the rule had to be instituted, but it did. And now it's having unintended consequences because it's affecting potentially players who are, quote unquote, more legitimately injured. But that doesn't change the past. So the idea, the notion is, well, what's here's what Harper writes. The point of the season awards is to, 1, reward players for their excellent performance, and 2, tell the story of what happened that season. When you start eliminating Cunningham and Doncic, maybe, and Wemby, maybe, and Edwards from the awards, you start affecting the story of the season. The idea that someone who might win Defensive Player of the Year over Wemby on a technicality is ridiculous. He's going to run away with that award if eligible. I guess I don't agree that it sullies the season or that people will forget. Somehow they'll go, oh, I forgot about Wemby. That's right. Right. I just don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think a lot of us are doing deep dives on 25 years later who won these awards.
But I'm hearing more and more of this sentiment, and I think what it is this stuff gets so important to people that they are willing to forget. Now, maybe they were consistent, and maybe they were against the rule changes in the first place. I don't know. But I'll say again, respectfully to anybody on that side of this story, you can't leave out what brought us here. You can't pretend that there were former NBA players who were incensed. Who's the guy on Sirius XM during the day? It's on the noontime show. The name will come to me.
Antonio Daniels?
Thank you, Antonio Daniels. He flat out said, I'm sorry. You got to go back to why the players, and you could say to a certain extent the organizations that were way too cavalier. And I don't know, can you come up with some kind of a system where you take it case by case? Well, that's a Pandora's box,
it is.
I think. How
it is.
How wide are you going to open up that box? I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, it's embarrassing that the league is in a position where some of the best players might not get the awards that they deserve, that they've obviously merited over the course of the season. But then that still says more about the what was in place, what was embedded in the NBA culture than it does what the league ultimately chose to do to try to rectify it. I still think you're mad at the wrong people if you're sitting there losing your mind about rules that most people understood or understand why they were put in place. And I don't know. I'm not going to toss and turn at night. Oh, God, Wemby didn't get Defensive Player of the Year. What are we going to do? I'm sorry. If we reach a point where there's a revolution in thinking and fewer players go down that particular... And by the way, I think the commissioner said, and I think he's right, their research indicates that the rule has had the effect it needed to on a lot of players. Maybe not enough teams because now we're we got 9 teams tanking.
Right.
But that in terms of many players, it has cleaned that up. And what has happened is it's just making it easier to be frustrated by these other quote unquote injuries that we look at and say, well, those, a collapsed lung is a collapsed lung, right? There's nothing phony or fake. That's not general soreness, right? But I can't lose that much sleep over it. That somehow the story of this season is going to be forgotten if the right players don't win those awards. What do you think?
I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. What do you think of Finchie's idea? Because it got brought up, I think, when Ant started missing games again this most recent time, because he's ineligible for all of them.
Yeah, that's true.
His idea was, and I haven't looked into this, give the award to the player, but not any of the financial, benefits that they might get from it, whether it's in their contract or some things get triggered. I don't know. That was his idea, was then they at least get acknowledged that they were first team All-NBA or whatever it was, but the money that they would have made, they don't get that. I'm pretty sure.
That's an interesting proposition, because you're back to what that would indicate his belief that what motivates the players to keep playing is the money that they might get with the award, I guess, right? Would that make the difference? Maybe it would. I'm not sure. I'm sure you'd probably have an argument from the players union on that. I don't know where the players would be, and I don't even know what the answer is. But in any case, that's where we are. And as we get ever closer to the end of the season and these awards and being named, you're going to have endless hyperventilation and these hand-wringing stories like, how stupid is this?
There's an asterisk by this one.
Yeah, and it's like, but if you leave out the start of the story, it's not as stupid as it seems if you just say, well, he's the best defensive player in basketball 10 times over, including Rudy Gobert at this point, Wemby. And he is. There's not any question about that. In any case, we'll stay on that story as well over the next few weeks, I'm sure. All right, let's pause here. We've got top 5 at 5 at the top of the hour. We've got Kessler coming up at 5:15. We are out at 6 o'clock today. I've got an interesting story out of San Francisco, California that's getting a lot of attention that kind of, I think, I don't want to say explode some myths, but it certainly suggests that some ideas that gained great credence on the streets are being re-examined, even in liberal, I guess you could say precincts like San Francisco, California. We'll get to that, and who knows what else when we return right here in the Fan. A national story, Dateline San Francisco, California, but I hope that members of Minneapolis city leadership read it. Might even get some ideas from it, especially given a number of stories recently about the direction we apparently are going in on a number of fronts, and some items being that are being, shall we say, in the business put under consideration that I'm not sure ends up being in the best interests of the community, but will probably be in the best interests of or the direction that this particular city council tends to want to go in. Written by a writer named Herman Lopez. And the headline is, this was in the New York Times. It's an opinion piece. The headline reads, San Francisco sobers up. And he writes that when he visited San Francisco in 2023, 3 years ago, parts of the city looked like open-air drug dens. Users made homes in tents that lined block after block. They bought, sold, and smoked fentanyl, crack, and meth in public, used drugs in front of a police station, visibly undeterred by the threat of the law. He writes that I once saw 4 people hunched over in what's called the fentanyl fold along a sidewalk in sight of City Hall. A startling vision, he writes, of what has gone wrong with West Coast progressivism. This year, he writes, I went back to find San Francisco and what he describes as the early stages of recovery. Tents were gone. I spotted drug use much less frequently. Officials didn't ignore the remaining addicts. Community ambassadors, as the city calls them, patrol the streets and try to persuade users to get into treatment. At a minimum, they made sure that people didn't treat sidewalks as campgrounds. I could move through the city without having to walk in the road, something most of America mercifully takes for granted. He describes this as a series of failures in the 80s and 90s. Or after the failures of the 80s and 90s, when he writes that lawmakers responded to a crack epidemic with mass incarceration, progressives united around an approach that decriminalized drugs, either literally or effectively. Literally in Oregon, effectively in San Francisco. The change, he writes, was well-intentioned, grounded in the reasonable view that addicts need help, not punishment, and the government's role was to make treatment available and to keep people alive, but not force them to stop. The theory was eventually people would seek out help on their own. In practice, he writes, drug users didn't get help. Free of serious consequences for even public drug use, they took over urban neighborhoods across the West Coast and injected, smoked, and snorted more freely than ever before. That by the time he visited, as we said earlier, in 2023, drug users and their tents clogged city streets, and overdose deaths reached a record high for San Francisco in a year when national overdose deaths actually declined. So San Franciscans, many of them got tired of it, even in this progressive bastion. One of them, Daniel Lurie, ran for mayor. He was an heir to the Levi Strauss clothing fortune. He had no, I think, politics in his background. He founded and ran a local anti-poverty nonprofit, said he changed tack because of the slide into what he describes as disorder. Here's the quote. "We lost our way as a city," the mayor told me in an interview from his wood-paneled office. "When you swing so far that there are no consequences, that you're allowing this many people to use and to die in your streets, something has gone wrong." City's voters apparently agreed with him. They elected him and what's described here as a more centrist board of supervisors, something we could only dream about here in Minneapolis, I would say. And so he writes, the new government set about dismantling the lax approach of recent years. Local officials describe their lodestar as getting addicts into treatment, even if that requires more force and coercion than the city's previous odes to bodily autonomy might have supported. As background, he mentions that in 2000, the San Francisco Health Commission approved a resolution adopting what's called harm reduction. It's a term you hear a lot. Some of that here. By 2020, harm reduction was in effect. The city's only drug policy. Treatment and recovery became secondary goals, if they were goals at all. Mentions that during that 2023 trip, one harm reduction provider of the social services program, Glide, told me that his group had recently dissuaded a client from quitting drugs cold turkey because the goal was unrealistic. Harm reduction providers did not want to push users into treatment. They worried that doing so could hurt their ability to help clients by scaring them away. The approach, all carrot, no stick. He writes, this failed to acknowledge the realities of drug use. Addiction is not a disease like diabetes or cancer. Diabetics and cancer patients typically want treatment. Many addicts, because of the nature of addiction, do not. And that's why people struggling with addiction often need an outside push, family member, friend, or ultimately even the government to seek that help. He notes that in the mid-2010s, the city's policy did not keep people alive by making their drug use safer when fentanyl reached that city. Instead, accidental overdose deaths spiked to more than 800 at their peak in 2023, which is triple the national rate. Public drug use soared. And as addicts sought money to pay for drugs, guess what? Shoplifting increased too, buoyed by voter-approved changes to a state law in 2014 that reduced penalties on property offenses. Some businesses fled, including half of CVS stores and pharmacies. And the city's illegal drug problem made it harder for San Franciscans to even get their legal drugs. Situation as it's deteriorating, the city's progressives dug in, argued that people have physical autonomy, meaning they should be allowed to put whatever they want into their bodies. San Francisco's experience showed those freedoms, when translated into public drug use, infringed on other people's rights to public safety and order. Many San Franciscans lost access to basics of modern life: walkable spaces, secure parks, grocery stores, and pharmacies. A minority's unchecked drug use was wrecking the city for pretty much everyone else. I walk my kids to school, the mayor said. I couldn't explain to my kids why they were seeing a guy walking across the street naked at 8 a.m. So, he's laid out a series of changes that, again, nobody wants to celebrate too soon, but seem to suggest a significant change on the street level when this writer, as I said, Herman Lopez, has returned to San Francisco. This story, he quotes a guy named Tom Wolf, a local addict turned activist, walked me through some of his old spots for drug use. When I asked him how he got into recovery, he said his stints in jail were the push he needed. I've talked to hundreds of former and current addicts across the country in my 15 years covering drugs, writes the writer of this piece. The importance of consequences is a regular theme. Pressure and threats from friends, family, and the government are often the tipping point in stopping drug use. San Francisco's new government is working to operationalize this concept that shouldn't be particularly radical, but in many precincts is considered radical. He writes that the approach, well, let me back up. The mayor holds weekly meetings with around 20 agencies to keep the city focused on the same mission. Board of Supervisors passed a law that made getting addicts into recovery the city's explicit goal. The plan is to open hundreds of new treatment beds. San Francisco still does have harm reduction services such as needle exchanges, but they're treated as a bridge to treatment, not the end game. He writes that the approach is holding steady. Overdose deaths are down from their peak, but most of the drop preceded Mr. Lurie's time in office, most likely because fentanyl had already killed much of the vulnerable population. Deaths dropped further, although only slightly during his first year as mayor, on track to fall more this year. And getting drug users off the street is not merely to make the city look better, he writes. It gives addicts a clear social signal that their drug use, especially in public, is no longer tolerated. That kind of friction could drive some to seek help, as community ambassadors can attest. Everyone else benefits, too, from cleaner, safer, and more walkable spaces as well. Now, he does go on to say that the challenges, well, he likens this a little bit to a widely celebrated approach in Portugal, where all drugs were decriminalized in 2001, meaning that possession no longer carried the threat of jail or prison time, but that the country also funded more treatment, set up a system that threatened drug users with punishment, such as fines, community service, or revoking professional licenses to keep them or to push them into seeking care. There's a little bit of muscle involved. That's from the architect of that Portugal system. The writer points out that as San Francisco tries to tighten up the policy, there is a major obstacle: the state government in Sacramento. San Franciscans may have changed their minds, but the state and its lawmakers remain deep blue. California voters have repeatedly enacted ballot measures making the criminal justice system more lenient. Local officials frequently complain that state policies restrict how much they can indeed do. Biggest problem in the state's enforcement of drug laws? Well, in theory, possession's a misdemeanor, punishable with jail time. The kind of leverage a prosecutor could use to push a user into treatment. In practice, lax and conflicting state laws, in combination with liberal judges and juries, have made it nearly impossible to get a conviction, let alone jail time, for what's called simple drug possession or public use. The San Francisco DA, Brooke Jenkins, says it can be difficult to get prison time even for drug dealers. She estimated it takes 2 to 3 arrests to persuade a court to hold someone in custody. That's an improvement from 4 to 5 cases required when she started the job in 2023, but says quite a lot in of itself. There's a section here about the governor and his approach and what impact he has had on this story as well. The mayor concludes with, we have our really important progressive values here in San Francisco and the state of California, but we have to take care of people in a different manner, and it's not by allowing them to continue to use and die on our streets. It's a terrific story. You can find it via New York Times. Herman Lopez is the writer, and I think it does have relevance to the city of Minneapolis and some things that are under consideration now, and just a general philosophy of approach. And I like, more than anything, the section where Lopez is saying, to the notion that you have the right to put whatever you want in your body, it's a point of view, actually, I think, that can be persuasive for a lot of people, even across the political, all over the political spectrum. But what it does conveniently leave out is what revealed itself in San Francisco. If you go with this approach and this philosophy too openly, over a period of time, you are more likely to create conditions that deprive others of their rights to even, as I said, walk around a city without having to deal with things that I think most of us would say should not be a part of the menu. It should not be a part of the equation. And we've seen, I think, in some other places, the pendulum swing a little bit back in this particular direction. The question is how long it can be sustained and how many people actually believe in it. But there should be, I think, a desire, to bring about a better, a safer situation and a greater sense of stability. That doesn't mean you have to be terrified by or afraid of the homeless or afraid of addicts, but it's perfectly human to be afraid of conditions and situations in which you feel less safe. And the goal, as hard as this is, should be, to me, emphasizing more what this city of San Francisco now seems to be doing after it has learned a series of hard lessons. Because what happens to people, even progressives? The rhetoric's good. The verbiage is good. But if you reach a point where enough of your time you are finding yourself in the middle of these challenges, just walking down the street, seeing the impact it has, and in many cases has on commerce as well, guess what? It becomes real. It becomes practical in a sense that says all of the things I've been told sound good in theory, but there are ramifications, there are consequences to continuing to go down this road. So he points out, again, that doesn't mean the fight's over, doesn't mean you can oversimplify the story, but this is what he writes about. And he says what he sees are encouraging signs of progress, but that what must be acknowledged is a different approach, a, dare I say it, tougher approach that you can't weaken on, that you cannot walk away from, that you cannot flinch the first time there might be some controversy or difficulty related to that particular procedure. Definitely worth, I think, your time. All right, here's our deal the rest of the way. We're out at 6 o'clock today for Timberwolves basketball or Wild hockey. Which is it?
Wolves Magic.
Wolves Magic, in which the Wolves are sitting pretty much everybody. You'll talk about that in more detail in the top 5 at 5, why the Wolves now feel confident about pretty much riding their bench probably for the rest of the season that doesn't have much left. And we'll get to some hockey. We'll have Kessler at about 5:15. We'll find out where we are on the Strait of Hormuz. Is it closed as Iranian officials have declared it to be? Where are we on that story? Where are we on Minneapolis bathhouses? Because that's become something, I guess, under consideration as well. I don't think I had that on my bingo card.
No.
Did you?
I did not.
But it's there. There's no question about that. 64686 is the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. What else for top 5?
You nailed it all. We got the Wolves in. We know the Wild opponent. And we should mention the hottest team in baseball.
Have I not mentioned them yet today?
We have not mentioned them yet today.
My bad.